CBS News said that she was a lesbian, and I mean, the point is, if she is one, why not be honest about it?
Well, I'm not saying anything about it, but I just don't traffic with those types of people.
Well, I mean, my issue is that
they live in their own world, but I do
exactly.
Not like,
but when she was in the Clinton administration, she tried to make all her decisions according to that.
Well, that's if you take a look at what she has that agenda. That is an agenda of a minority here in America. That is not an agenda that is looking out for the best interests of everybody as a whole. She is in there to pursue her own and to protect her own special interests. And if you read her 93 and 96 law review articles that she wrote for the University of Chicago Law Review, that is exactly what she wants to do.
It's all she talks about. She's obsessed with it. Instead of cutting my taxes and leaving my private property alone and letting me raise my kids, she wants to come in and brainwash me and my family. She's obsessed with this issue. That's all she cares about. And her and Sonia Sotomayor, I guess, can, go fishing together.
Well, what more can I say, Alex? You just finished it off.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's good. How about the gun issue?
Yeah, oh yeah. Let's get into that.
2 years ago, right about now, we had the Heller decision came out. Now, I followed the Heller decision as it went up because a good friend of mine, Dane von Breikenberghart, with the U.S. Bill of Rights Foundation in Washington, D.C., his landlord was Dick Heller. And he's the guy that set up the whole Heller case. And when they created the factual foundation that would enable them to go to court and litigate the gun ban, Dane is the one that set all that up. You ought to get him on the show. But, I followed all the steps going up through the courts, on the Heller case, because, I talked to Dane. Well, gee, where are things going on with it right now? And it ultimately resulted in something beneficial. And that demonstrates that, one of the things the freedom movement doesn't do, we have a lot of people just kind of running around. They don't know where to go or what to do. Here's an illustration of something that was successful. They sat down and planned a legal course of litigation, and they carefully planned it and went all the way to the Supreme Court. And guess what? We got the Heller decision. Now, the same thing with the McDonald case. They made a very careful the litigation strategy that has resulted in another favorable, to a degree, favorable decision. And I certainly concur with you about what the court is indicating, the limits of the police power. And that's something I want to talk about and mention here in the closing moments of this show. Alex, if I see where the gun rights battle is going to go. I think we're going to have to shift over to, while we were dealing with the Second Amendment, and really the Second Amendment, if it's going to be incorporated to the 14th Amendment and made applicable to the states, the Second Amendment, in my view, is not as powerful as a lot of the state constitutional provisions in the same respect. Now,
so you're saying we've got to use the state constitutions against these cities and counties that are out of control?
Absolutely, but the reason why they got to do it up in Chicago is you don't have a constitutional provision in the Illinois Constitution. But let me read to you the Alabama Constitution, and you will see that this provision is, in my view, and I think you'll agree, that it's stronger than the Second Amendment. It says that every citizen has a right to bear arms in defense of himself and the state. Now, that doesn't have any relationship to the militia. And it also talks about you have the right to bear arms in defense of yourself. Now, the Texas Constitution reads almost identical, except there's an acknowledgement of this thing known as the police power. And I want to discuss the police power in just a second. But the Texas Constitution says every citizen shall have the right to keep and bear arms in the lawful defense of himself or the state. But the legislature shall have power, by law, to regulate the wearing of arms with a view to prevent crime. Now, that second phrase right there after the semicolon, but the legislature shall have power. That's an acknowledgement. That's a real good description. When a lawyer looks at that, that's based on the police power of the state. Now, the police power of the state is something that the Patriot movement doesn't know anything about, the freedom movement. And it's something that we need to really understand the reach and scope of the police power of the state. And when we sit down and study that subject matter, you'll reach the conclusion that the limits, here is one of the limits of the power of the state, the police power of the state. And the state cannot prevent. There is no lawful authority for government to stop the people from doing something beneficial for themselves. The police power of the state extends to those things that protect the health, safety, and welfare of the state. For an activity that would harm the health, welfare, or safety of the people, you can enact laws. But then again, there's a whole lot of stupid laws.
And they're always using the welfare clause to basically enslave us, just like they use, federally, the Commerce Clause. But here's how I read the decision as a layman, and I will defer to you as a very successful constitutional law scholar and constitutional lawyer. But I understand that the suits were good, the reasons for the suits were good. The NRA in both briefings went in and added their own amicus brief that they add on to it, that basically agreed, we say you can, restrict guns under the law. You just can't say there's an outright ban here. And, of course, the head of Gun Owners of America has agreed that overall it can be seen as positive that they didn't just outright say you have no right to a Second Amendment, turn all your guns in. But 4 of the 9 did say that in both cases. But now... I heard Violence Policy Center and Handgun Control Incorporated on TV, on radio, both, saying, oh, this is great for us. Sure, it says you might have some right under law if the city so chooses, basically, to let you jump through the red tape, to allow some people to have guns in some cases. But we're now going to use this in other areas to state that we do have this, you have a Second Amendment, except when abridged by law. So they see it as the first time the Supreme Court, in my knowledge, is saying, yeah, you got a Second Amendment, and that Second Amendment's a right for us to write a bunch of red tape and make it almost impossible.
Well, that's certainly the thrust of the decision itself, that here you have a right, and there's a police power regulation that can control that right. What I am saying in response to that, hear me out. Let me ask you this, Alex. Can the government pass a law that if a citizen is attacked by, a burglar, that the citizen could not defend himself? Or
no, they cannot restrain you from a right you already have. That's why we have the right of citizen's arrest, which they're trying to eradicate, because it shows inherent in us, as the top of the food chain in the governmental system, a government for and by we the people. Now, they have tried to pass laws like that in Chicago, and they're now trying to prosecute people, and England does it. And it shows the government wants the monopoly of force, like the mafia, where you've got to go to them to get your insurance, and then they don't provide it. And the courts have ruled that police have no liability to protect you. So I believe that they do not have a right to do that, and the courts have shown that.
Well, the reason I'm bringing this up is to offer... the new groundwork, a new way of thinking, to change everybody's mindset, to start thinking about, a different way of looking at your rights. And if the state simply does not have the right to enact a law that would prevent you from defending yourself when you're attacked by, some criminal, if they don't have that power, then where do they have the power to come along and say you can't use arms in defense of yourself? Because the limits of the state government, the government can't harm the people. Any time that the government comes along and harms the people, it's acting against its power.
No, I totally agree with you. You're absolutely right, and that's a key point you brought up here. Every statistic shows, back in the 60s, people were trying to be trendy. It was almost 50-50 pro-gun rights, anti-gun rights. Now the polls I see are in the 70s or higher. The momentum shifting. All the liberals I know are out literally buying guns. They've broken their conditioning. The gun culture is back and is really growing. And I think they're horrified and desperately going for everything right now. And I think in their miscalculation and their attempt to really get us down on the ground, that they're going to reveal themselves and that we are going to beat these people. I can feel it. I can see it. What do you see, Larry Becraft?
Well, here's what happened in the last couple of years. I've been involved with the organized freedom movement for more than 30 years. I met Tupper Saucy back in 1979, Alex, and I've been with the organized freedom movement ever since. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of the freedom movement. But the movement has grown, and then it's been attacked, and people have fallen out and, gone on the way. But what has changed, and I really want to tell you that I believe Ron Paul really started it, When Ron Paul got his candidacy going, that kicked, you could ride around town and people I never knew even knew anything about
It was
Ron
a
Paul.
catalyst. It was a catalyst for the final illusion that we're alone, to show us just how powerful we are.
Absolutely. And then I think that was critical in bringing back the Tea Parties. And yes, I would like to think, I really do think that we are on the cusp of reasserting our power and moving forward. But we've got to do it in a very careful, organized way. And
we've got to never stop, and we've got to realize it's life and death. I want to play a clip of a Congressman King, talking about Obama's birth certificate. As we go to break, we're going to come back and play the Kagan clip of her saying, yes, the government can have laws on the books to ban books. But here's the birth certificate issue coming up.
For their $44,000, that's their share of the national debt. A little baby with ink on their foot, stamped right there on the birth certificate. There's one in this country we haven't seen, but the footprint on those we have seen, those little babies. Oh, Uncle Sam, $44,000.